I'd like at this time then to talk about our panel. In this morning's panel, we have an opportunity to understand joint perspectives on our symposium topic, and we're very happy to have our panel moderator, Major General Sarah Zabel, Vice Director of Disa, with us as moderator. Her experience in 2 combatant commands on the Joint Staff, on the Air Staff, along with the duties with the National Security Agency are excellent qualifications for our discussions, a very broad look at the number of operating entities that work in this space. We are very happy to have her with us now. She's the Vice Director of Disa. She helps lead a global organization of military, civilian, and contract personnel. Frankly, an agency we know well, having been through 2.5 days and no chance, too few to visit with them in their very nice booth they have out here. But her job takes her really deep into the organization as she looks across executing the variety of operational missions. I know she's interested in turning her panel loose on the topics we have before us. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm welcome for General Zabel and this morning's panel.
Thank you, General Wood. And I'd like to start by thanking AFCEA for giving us a chance to talk to this, this very large audience, and I really appreciate you all showing up. We are here to talk to you about the joint warfighter needs. And when you get down to it, with everything that we're talking about here, this is basically the core of everything that we are doing here over this several-day symposium. It's about the needs of the warfighter. We currently have 150,000 U.S. active duty military who are either deployed or stationed overseas. In addition to that, we have active duty military and Guard and Reserve who are deployed in place across the United States, actually prosecuting today's wars. And that includes safeguarding our nuclear, safeguarding and maintaining and being ready to operate our nuclear enterprise. These people are in 150 different countries around the world, and with our smaller and smaller military forces, the only way in which we step up continually to do a harder and more complex job is by being enabled technologically and being connected through reliable communications. The people you see in front of you are sitting on both sides of this equation, where both sides are, first of all, being able to provide and support and sustain our technologically enabled and connected warfighters, but also dealing with the vulnerabilities that that sort of technological connectedness implies in terms of the cyber threat. So the warfighters you have in front of you, like I said, they both provide the capability and they safeguard the capability for their warfighters to be able to communicate and to act in the field. I'm going to introduce them starting on my far right with Admiral Shepard and working this way, and then I'll give them a chance to make opening comments, and then we will go to your questions. First of all, Rear Admiral Dwight Shepard is the Director of Cyberspace Operations and the J6 of U.S. NORAD Northcom. The North American Aerospace Defense Command conducts aerospace warning, aerospace control, and maritime warning in the defense of North America. It is a binational U.S. and Canadian command. U.S. Northern Command, or U.S. Northcom, partners to conduct homeland defense, civil support, and security cooperation to defend and secure the United States and its interests. U.S. Northcom's AOR includes air, land, sea approaches and encompasses the continental United States, Alaska, Canada, Mexico, and the surrounding water. It also includes the Gulf of Mexico, the Straits of Florida, portions of the Caribbean, to include the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, and U.S. Virgin Islands. The commander of U.S. Northcom is responsible for theater security cooperation with Canada, Mexico, and the Bahamas. Admiral Shepard comes from a long and distinguished Navy career. His operational command tours include the Fleet Air Reconnaissance 3, or VQ-3, the Navy's largest aviation squadron. His major command was Strategic Communications Wing 1 and Task Force 124. Next to him, we have Lieutenant General Kevin Mclaughlin, who is the Deputy Commander of U.S. Cyber Command. U.S. Cyber Command directs the cyber forces that defend the department's information networks, provide full-spectrum cyberspace operations or options to military plans and operations, and when directed, defend U.S. critical infrastructure from cyber attacks of significant consequence. Lieutenant General Mclaughlin has a deep history in Air Force space and satellite programs, as well as cyber, and prior to assuming his current position, he commanded the 24th Air Force and was the Air Force Cyber commander in Joint Base San Antonio, Lackland, Texas. Next to him, we have Major General Sandy Finnan. She is the Deputy Chief Information Officer for Command, Control, Communications, and Computers and Information Infrastructure Capabilities, Office of the Secretary of Defense. She provides expertise and broad guidance on policy, programmatic, and technical issues relating to C4 and IIC in order to achieve and maintain information dominance for the department. She also manages efforts defining DoD policies and strategies for design, architecture, interoperability standards, capability development, and sustainment of critical C2 and communications for nuclear and non-nuclear strategic strike, and defense and national leadership command capabilities. Her commands include a Space Operations Squadron, a missile wing, and a center. She has deployed to the Combined Air Operations Center in Southwest Asia as the Director of Space Forces in support of Operations Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom. And previously, she was the commander of the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center. And sitting immediately to my right, we have Mr. Dean Betzer, U.S. Special Operations Command, J62, the Chief of Cybersecurity. SOCOM J6 is responsible for developing U.S. SOCOM's information technology strategy, as well as executing the command's Command, Control, Communications, and Computer Systems Acquisition Program. The organization also operates and maintains U.S. SOCOM's global network, providing support to more than 56,000 special operations personnel. Mr. Betzer is a former Deputy for Operations at U.S. SOCOM J6 and is now the Chief of Cybersecurity for the command. As such, he is responsible for the security of all networks supporting SOF forces worldwide in 76 countries and deployed with over 12,000 deployed. SOCOM networks connect over 1,100 SOF deployable nodes daily in SIPR, NIPR, and TS-SCI networks. Sorry, my voice is a little bit gone. I think I'm suffering from a cold. So I would like to start over with Admiral Shepard and ask that you each make an opening statement before we go to questions.
Okay, good. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the nation's capital. I left Colorado Springs. It was 4 inches of snow and 32 degrees. So I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. So 3 things that I want to talk about real quick, and I'll just throw these out real fast, maybe spur some questions later on. But I won't beat up. The number 1 is partnering. Partnering is at the center of gravity for NORAD Northcom, specifically in the defense of defense support of civilian authorities mission that we have out there. We actually have about 60 interagency assigned to NORAD Northcom, with about 50 of them having LNOs actually in the headquarters. So partnering is key. Where we are missing something, obviously, is with industry. So I won't beat that horse, because we talked about over the last 3 days, how important and how vital that's going to be for us. So we just got to figure a way ahead and how we get with our industry partners. We're pretty good at interagency. We're pretty good at defense organizations and combatant commands. Second thing is the technology. The technology revolution is what I call it, because it is moving so fast, we're struggling to keep up. It's moving at the speed of light, and of course, everybody up here, we move at the speed of Palm, or the speed of sequester, or the speed of very slow. So we're struggling with that. And again, that goes back to that partnering piece, that we have to partner now and share information and share techniques and procedures so that we can, and best practices so that we can keep up. And when I talk about technology, not just tools to use to defend the networks, but also TTPs. So as we reduce our threat surfaces, as we move toward this JIE concept, as we move toward this mission partner environment, as we do more cloud storage now and future cloud computing, we have to start thinking differently on how we defend our networks. And we get into more modeling and more simulation and more things like that. As we move to virtual desktops, all that is going to help us with defending our networks. So we're going to have to use technology and leverage technology to get us up to speed. And then finally, the personnel piece, and we talked about that before. HPCO CEO talked about that yesterday, and maybe some thoughts that she had on how we can maybe think differently, how we share personnel. One example of the cyber piece is the Air Force Academy just graduated its first 3 cyber degree major guys. The Air Force Academy is also investing about $58 million to create their Cyber Innovation Center, which will be online this year. So that manning, training, and then retaining our personnel is going to be valuable to us. And I'm standing by, and hopefully we get some good questions. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you, and I've got a few very brief opening remarks because I'm looking forward to your questions. The command in general, and then I think even more broadly, cyber operations across the department continues to mature at a rapid, accelerating rate. Our mission at Cyber Command hasn't changed. The focus areas in general remain the same as they have been for the last 12 to 18 months. But the focus priorities for 2016, from Admiral Rogers' perspective, have been in a couple of key areas. Defensive cyber operations remains our top priority given to us from the Secretary of Defense, but we are broadening our perspective from really focusing, I would say, earlier on networks to including networks, but broadening to weapon systems, platforms, and critical infrastructure as a set of skills and a focus area that we need within the command. We're going to continue to build on the progress we've made at generating the force that underpins Cyber Command's capabilities, the tactical forces. But we're transitioning really from a build focus, training and getting people in place, to a combat readiness focus and thinking about the ability of that force to be used in an agile and flexible way. So a lot of discussion on how we do that generally within the command and with the partners you see here at the table and with OSD and the Joint Staff. We are focusing hard on resourcing the enablers that our tactical forces need. Lots of activity there on capabilities that are envisioned and that are in the early stages of being funded. I think as you look at the FY17 budget, you begin to see that taking shape and the progress that's being made. And then last, I would say, not just from U.S. Cyber Command's perspective, but it's really hard to delineate at times between what our command's focus is versus the broader department on cybersecurity in general. So we are working as a key partner within the command, but with OSD and the services to raise the overall cybersecurity baseline for the department, change the culture associated with that across the department, and not just for cyber professionals, but for everyone that wears a DoD uniform, civilian or military. So those are really the broad priority focus, I would say, areas or changes for 2016. But instead of kind of going through our mission, which you've probably heard at times, I'm really looking forward to your questions and what maybe the subtle issues are that are on your mind today. Thanks.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here today, and I want to thank AFCEA for what you do. What you do is valued and important, and it makes a difference. So again, thank you very much. I support the DoD CIO, Mr. Terry Halverson. Many of you probably saw him yesterday as he did a keynote speaker. He was a keynote speaker, and also he did a fireside chat with Meg Whitman. As far as how I support him, my office handles several of his key issues. But when I think about it, what it really boils down for the OSD CIO office, at least for my office, is that we provide policy, guidance, strategy, and leadership. This work directly impacts the warfighter by empowering secure communications in many ways. Providing improved PNT resilience is one of them. We are focusing the department on near-term fielding of military GPS user equipment capabilities and enhancements to legacy systems. In the mid to long term, the DoD intends to provide assured PNT to the warfighter by complementing GPS. Technology options we are exploring to complement the GPS include other radio navigation signals, integration with leading-edge inertial technologies, and incorporation of highly accurate chip-scale atomic clocks. We also provide enhanced satellite communications enabling capability, both military and commercial. we are developing DoD's first department-level policy issuance for SATCOM. We are also engaged in a series of wideband MIL-SATCOM and COM-SATCOM studies looking at the appropriate mix of wideband SATCOM solutions. We provide communications supporting C4 capabilities. Success in past conflicts has relied on information superiority on the field of conflict. This information superiority has been largely dependent on widespread use of modern communications electronics hardware and software. Unfortunately, that superiority in electronics is now severely challenged, and a substantial set of initiatives is needed to regain the advantage. While sufficient progress in the past decade has enhanced networking the force, at the tactical edge, our warfighters need uninterrupted communications, providing uninterrupted access to critical communications and information links in a contested, congested, and competitive electromagnetic operating environment. We also provide spectrum policy. We develop DoD spectrum policy and support the broader U.S. interests. The department is proactively engaged with industry along with national and international partners to develop and exploit the technologies which will optimize access to the electromagnetic spectrum and ensure global operational flexibility. DoD is leading the spectrum policy evolution that will allow all who operate in the electromagnetic spectrum to take advantage of the new technologies. DoD must balance the competing demands for access to the spectrum to support national security and foster economic development and U.S. technological innovation. One of the other things we do is we provide national leadership command capabilities. We manage the nuclear command and control capability for the nation. This guides efforts related to the National Leadership Command capabilities, which ensure measures are in place to provide complete and timely situational awareness and critical tools for our senior national decision makers. In short, we have a very varied mission set. Our bottom line is to ensure that the warfighter has what they need when they need it. To provide the warfighter with secure communications, this event's theme of rethinking how we build networks, synchronizing industry and DoD for Internet 2.0 is absolutely critical. To synchronize with industry and leverage today's industry innovation, DoD must partner more proactively, more transparently, and more quickly with industry. The most powerful innovation will come through culture and speed. Adapting DoD culture to more quickly adopt innovation will help us maintain a competitive edge. This innovation, through partnership, dialogue, transparency with partners across government and with the commercial sector, will help us better empower the warfighter. Thank you.
Good morning. One of SOCOM's biggest operational needs is to keep the system secure to the mobile warfighter, who is operating on the tactical edge. Many soft warfighters at the tip of the spear have limited bandwidth, which creates a unique problem when trying to keep their systems patched and up to date. SOCOM provides support to 4 service components and 7 Theater Special Operations Commands, or TSOCs, which are OPCON to each of the GCCs. To do this, we use a blend of our own network defenders, Computer Network Defense Service Provider, which is provided by Disa, our 24/7 Computer Security Incident Response Team, and our cyber protection teams to address the cyber threat and take actions. The 2 key advantages we see in our CPT forces are first, that we have them on site and on the network at all times. They're able to operate and understand our networks daily because they use them to operate. Their tools are available for use rapidly after the CPT is called into use for a mission. The second key advantage is our cross-functional squads, which allow us to conduct multiple missions simultaneously in separate geographical and logical AORs. As Admiral Shepard mentioned, it's key with our agency and coalition partners lately. Operation Inherent Resolve, there's many coalition partners that we did not used to partner with that we need to be able to share and ensure the data is secure in transferring. I'd like to thank FCA, Disa, and our industry partners for sponsoring and participating in this valuable conference, which gets after one of our nation's and DoD's most important priority problem sets. Thank you.
All right, thank you, panel members. Now, to prime the pump, I'm going to ask the first two questions, and then we'll go to the booth. So the first one, cyber command and control is a hot topic, and we have representatives on this panel from functional combatant commands. We have U.S. Cybercom, we have U.S. SOCOM, as well as geographic combatant command, U.S. NORAD Northcom. As you look to the future, do you think we will move more towards centralized control of defensive cyber forces, for example, by U.S. Cyber Command, or would we move towards control by a geographic or a particular functional combatant commander? Would we say that as we set up a joint task force, the joint task force is led, it's led under the geographic combatant command structure, therefore cyber forces should work directly and be employed directly by them. Which way do you think that we should be going in the future? I'll throw that open to the panel.
You want to go first?
All right, I'll go first since the three-star said I should go first. I definitely believe that we need a global synchronizer. So because right now we got a supply and demand problem, obviously, as we build our cyber mission forces. Be it JFHQ Doden or Cybercom, but somebody needs to be a global synchronizer. I'm not sure that it could be a central control of the defensive forces. I'm not sure how that will work because each combatant command has its own unique sort of priorities and has its own unique sort of mission requirements based on UCP or other guidance. And the combatant commands would need to be able to have the flexibility and agility to adjust their defensive forces as they see fit based on the threat. So the centralized control, I'm thinking that that's probably should stay with the combatant commands, but I think that there's a place for our defensive forces as a synchronizer, a global synchronizer, setting priorities on whose mission based on what threat. So I think it'll be a combination of the two. It's sort of what I'm leaning at. And thinking how it will work. So that's just kind of my thoughts on it.
But to be specific, you said, so centralized control should stay with, you said with the combatant commands. Are you saying with the geographic combatant commands?
I think the centralized control should stay with the geographic combatant commands, if I had to be specific. Because again, they're about supporting and defending their AOR.
Right.
So,
okay.
And they're gonna have to set their own priorities on that.
Is there a rebuttal?
I think maybe the functional and the geographic combatant command.
Yeah, we have a functional combatant command, U.S. Special Operations Command.
Okay, I'll jump in here. I believe, I agree with Admiral Shepard, but I believe there's a couple lines of effort that would be better utilized with centralized commands, such as defending the nation and protecting the Doden. I think those are pretty much a Cybercom centralized directed mission. But COCOM support, I'm agreeing. We all have, the combatant commands all have different geographical AORs, logical AORs, different cyber key terrain. I'm not sure the same mission sets that if Cybercom was centralized on the control of the forces, that they could dive in and look at the same level of key terrain for the tactical and operational levels as they would on the strategic level.
Well, I want to pick apart that a little bit. You said defend the nation.
Yes,
probably should be centralized like U.S. Cyber Command.
Yes, ma'am.
However, on the far right, so part of what U.S. Northcom does, of course, is the assistance to civil authorities. So would this be pulling apart their traditional working relationship in the cyber domain but not in other domains? Or do you see it more as am I steering you the wrong way? You're not really talking about that aspect of Defend the Nation?
I'm not really considering that as far as Defend the Nation. It was more of, even within a COCOM, our cyber key terrain may change. The same cyber key terrain that Central Command may look at for Afghanistan is not necessarily the same cyber key terrain that we'd look at for the Iraq mission set or the Syria mission set. So even within a COCOM, the cyber key terrain may change. And I just don't think by centralized control we could get after that level of detail with the forces.
Okay. Oh, and you were going to add something else. I'm sorry. Did you want to add anything else?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, General Mclaughlin.
I think the both the two combatant command perspectives give some insight into what I think we're actually doing right now and what we're trying to drive towards. Admiral Shepard talked about a little bit of both, and I think what we're seeing today is something that recognizes this is not just in cyber. This is a broader discussion across the department. You know, the types of problems we deal with, whether it's a large contingency, a major threat, the reality is today they span not just one combatant command, not just a few functional commands. They span often 4, 5, or 6 combatant commands. They're trans-regional global problems. They are all domain. They're all multi-agency, and they're coalition. It's just the nature of the type of problems that we have. So the notion that this is sort of boils down to which organization has OPCON or control is really, in my mind, not the issue as much anymore. It's how do all of the participants have the right level of control, but at the same time a structure that allows collaboration and sort of management of risk and teeing up the right sets of trades in terms of what we need to do as a nation. Defensive cyber operations are very similar to that. We have a level of centralized control right now, and it's relatively new. So the authority delegated down through Strategic Command to Admiral Rogers, actually to General Lynn, who I just saw, who's someplace in the room. He has central control to direct operations across the DoD information network, as well as defensive operations. The whole DoD, he has that authority to direct defensive operations across there. That doesn't mean all of the forces associated with doing that are U.S. Cyber Command forces. Across the whole DoD, whether it's SOCOM or it's NORTHCOM, they have forces that they own that are responsible to them, and they have responsibilities they know their terrain, they know their mission, and they understand what's unique about their needs. There's no centralized control over that, but there is a synchronization when there's a threat. Let's take a major cyber incident or an intrusion. Those typically don't manifest themselves in one of those locations. We had a major threat that we dealt with last summer that we had to respond to globally, but it manifested itself at specific areas, 2 or 3 different combatant commands, a couple of services, our joint staff. So in each case, we dealt with the unique problems and mission risk in that with the leader of each of those organizations while we managed a global synchronized defensive reaction. That's the world we live in. And so it's, the goal is how do we make this less about control, which even the way Sarah teed up the question, is sort of, in my view, the old thing. This is control and command and control lines are critical. I understand that, but this is really about bringing the power of the enterprise to solve broader problems than just one combatant command or one service or really one functional leader's problem today. So that's sort of my answer to that question.
I think it's a good answer. All right. Looking a few years in the future, what is the most significant change you would like to see in the way we support the warfighter in the cyber domain?
Well, I'd like to first answer that broadly. I think, actually right now we need to be this, but we need to be adaptive, we need to be fast, and we need to be resilient. The space that we're operating in is congested, it is contested, and we do have competitors in those spaces that can challenge us. So to look at that specifically, I'd like to use one example, which is spectrum. Right, we're pretty obvious with our spectrum, right? We tell everyone where we operate each different kind of system. We're going to operate SATCOM over here, we're going to operate radar over here, we're going to operate, we tell everyone exactly where we are. So they know exactly where to attack to try and weaken us or to take out that capability. So what I'm hoping to see a few years in the future is a lot more resiliency in our ability to use the spectrum. I hope to see technologies advanced that allow our, whether it's our radio or a computer system or a radar system to be able to adapt, and if it sees jamming, be able to go someplace else. Our spectrum, much of it is shared now. Much of it is being auctioned off because we need to share that spectrum with our civil partners. So we must be adaptive within that spectrum. I think that spectrum operations are so important that we ought to look at declaring the electromagnetic spectrum a domain, because we are going to be operating offensively and defensively across that domain. So I think that's one of the most important things that we can see for the future.
Thank you. Anybody else? Take a whack.
If I were king for a day, I agree with everything she says, but if I was king for the day, I would magically make us have 10,000 cyber mission forces, because I think the key in the future is going to be persistent presence. So we can't wait and react to a threat. We have to be proactive, and right now it's just a supply and demand issue. So if I had the persistent presence that I can put on my key infrastructure or my critical mission systems the whole time, that would be great from my perspective. And then utilizing tools and utilizing other things that we can do to monitor and detect and then mitigate. So if I were king for a day, that cyber mission force would increase twofold, but I'm not king for the day. So.
But you're a near king. So as far as we're concerned, because you're an important combatant command. But I think if I could foresee, look into the future, kind of from where we are today, and first I'll tell you the ability to predict what we might want in the future based on what I think is going to happen. I know that I'll be wrong, because the priorities we have as a nation just today. You look at the counter-ISIL fight that's a high priority for the United States. We weren't really organized or focused on that not very long ago. Resurgent Russia and the focus and the challenges there. At the instantiation of our command and our forces, we knew Russia was an important focus area, but it wasn't top. And so things change pretty rapidly. And I'll tell you, if I look into the future, what I would love to be able to see is a cyber force that is flexible and agile and able to respond to those changes as they happen, either a new combatant command problem or a national problem or a broad DoD problem. There are some who think cyber forces are not agile, that you have to place your bets years in advance as to what they're going to focus on. And I think we thought that maybe initially. We're now in a place where we need agile forces and an agile way to respond to the problems. That's the first thing that we would want to see. Today, the Cyber Mission Force is a young force. We are not even through building it. It is not fully combat ready, and it is not fully equipped. So in the future, what we would like to see is a full-up, mature force equipped with all the capabilities and enablers that it requires, and that it is combat ready in terms of we have readiness reporting, like we do in all other forces, and the department knows what its capacity is and what we're able to bring to the fight at any one time. What I'd also like to say, though, and generally what I would like to see that's not cyber command only, on the cybersecurity side, while we like to talk about offense and what we might be able to do to impose our will or to impose costs on an adversary, it is essential that we raise the security baseline across the entire department. That is not just about cyber protection teams. Admiral Shepard said he'd love to see thousands. We would love to see way more than what we have, but we're building 68 cyber protection teams. So they are already high demand, low density forces. The strategy ought to be for the department is to take every one of those enterprise or network owners and defenders, give them the tools and the capability, and raise the force we have to a higher level, and to connect us together where we can operate as an enterprise defensively. That's not just a material issue. It is a cultural change for us. We have to invest in secure systems. We have to take legacy systems, which the department's doing right now. Mr. Halverson might have talked about that yesterday. The whole cybersecurity scorecard that you all hear about is about understanding where we are as a department, what the priority investment needs to be to get our baseline up to the point where this is not an Achilles heel or a major vulnerability for the nation. So in the broad strokes, that's what I would like to be able to see if I look forward in terms of what we offer to the combatant commands as a command and what we've done to equip our force to meet the challenges we're going to have.
And if I could just add just a little bit on that, what I think we would also like to see is cyber basics throughout the force. And I'm not just talking about the cyber warriors, I'm talking about every person who touches electronic equipment, right? We need everybody to have good basics, because a lot of the compromises we have is because a human did something that they shouldn't have done. And so getting that basic level of understanding across the entire force, cyber basics, is really important.
Good.
All right, let's turn to some questions from the sound booth, please.
Thank you, ma'am. First question. We have been talking about the cyber C2 structure for over a decade. What is it going to take to get a definitive C2 structure in place so that gaps and seams in this critical area can be covered?
So I probably would agree that we've been talking about it for over a decade. I would take issue with the notion that we've sort of stayed static for a decade. We've made significant changes in clarifying in very discrete ways how cyber C2 works. We haven't solved all the issues. In fact, we're continuing to work that within the services and within the Joint Staff now. But let me give you a couple of examples. U.S. Cyber Command didn't exist 10 years ago. It exists today. We have a commander that's been given responsibility and a set of forces that are assigned in the assigned in our global force management plan to Admiral, delegated down through U.S. Strategic Command to Admiral Rogers. That didn't exist very long ago. He has OPCON of all of those forces, with the exception of delegated operational control of some cyber protection teams that are working combatant commander problems. Most significantly, and I just mentioned this a little bit ago, until about 12 or 13 months ago, the United States Cyber Command commander did not have the authority to direct DODN operations and defensive operations across the entire DODN. He has that authority today, and it's delegated down to General Lynn as the DODN Joint Force Headquarters commander. He has authority to direct operations in COCOM networks. He can direct himself as the Disa director. He can direct services. He has a set of, those are huge issues. We argued and talked about that for a decade, but that has been clarified, and the Secretary signed the recent order that put that into place. So what we are doing right now is we are now working specifically on, as U.S. Cyber Command's forces mature, what are the next set of changes or decisions that need to be made to clarify how we actually, within the combatant commands, how our command integrates directly into those commands, how that works. I would say those are still hard issues, but I think they pale in comparison to the issues we have resolved that we've put in place. So maybe we haven't been as clear as a department of what we actually have put in place, but I'm pretty amazed at how much progress we've made, and that's the reason I took a little bit of issue with the nature of the question, as if we've stayed still and that we're still admiring the problem. Last thing I would say is, where we make big decisions in the military is we go into the chairman has his tank process, and it's amazing to me. A big surprise is how often we are in the tank working issues just like this. So this is not just the cyber people working this. This is on the mind of the department leadership, all the way up at the most senior levels, as to how do we streamline and make this area effective from a command and control perspective, and they are listening and making the decisions that are needed to move us forward. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Next question.
Can you please address concerns related to authorities, chain of command, and combatant command support of government agencies in the event of a domestic cyber incident?
Well, you have a couple of the key organizations sitting right here next to each other. In fact, about 2 weeks ago, the U.S. Cyber Command senior staff was in Colorado Springs with staff talks with U.S. Northern Command. where we were actually putting meat on the bones. So what is the framework in a national incident? Whether it could be a natural disaster, it could be an incident caused by an adversary that generates an issue in the homeland, where military forces are going to be called into action to respond to a broader national incident. We know how to do that as a department in the Defense Support to Civil Authorities framework. What's being added to that is the cyber element of that framework, and so all the way at the national level, policy in the Office of Secretary of Defense, the policy elements of that are being put in place. And so while I will tell you we really haven't done it, we haven't had to execute one of those, we are working hard to make sure that if it happened, cyber forces would just fold in like we do in other domains. We would always be, in our view, at Cyber Command. While we might be responsible for executing within some framework the cyber part of a response, we would always be doing that in support of either a lead federal agency, and we would fold in with the U.S. Northern Command. We would probably have a strong relationship, likely with the Department of Homeland Security, depending on whoever was designated lead. So there's been a lot of discussion that we don't know how to do this, or there's disconnects there. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we know how we would do it. We are making sure that if in the event that it happens, we're ready to execute. The last thing I would say on it, we have an exercise called Cyber Guard that we have done for multiple years in a row. It's growing much larger. We run that as a command, but it really is a broad interagency exercise. It's usually a non-DoD scenario. Department of Homeland, we have lots of federal agencies that are there, multiple combatant commands, industry, states, total force, that we're practicing and teeing up any areas where we need refined policy or procedures so that we can respond to a national emergency, an attack or an event of significant consequence for the DoD. So I do think we know how to do this, and we are plugged in with the parts of the DoD that do it for a living in all the domains, and hopefully we will never have to do it, but I think history tells us there will be an event in the future where the cyber part of that broader response is going to be part of what we do, and I think we're postured to do that.
Exactly. I mean, as you all know, as a DoD organization, it has to be a declared federal emergency, and they got to request the DoD presence, Constitution, posse comitatus. So we have all those rules. But once that is done and in place, then we execute the DISCA, like we do. Unfortunately, we do too often, i.e. wildfires or tornadoes or floods or hurricanes. So we're good, like General said, we're really good at that piece. From a cyber standpoint, we would have to coordinate with DHS, because DHS or FEMA may be the lead federal agencies. And then we'd have to coordinate, obviously, with the states that are affected and their tags and the National Guard and their governors and through that whole system. And then the expertise, truthfully, is going to reside at GFHQ, Doden, and Cybercom. I mean, that's where the experts are going to be at to tackle that problem. I can tell you from a NORAD NORTHCOM perspective, we're really good at hurricanes, tornadoes, but we're not capable, truthfully, to tackle a cyber event. So we, in my mind, would be supporting of Cybercom or GFHQ Doden, along with coordinating and synchronizing with Department of Homeland Security or FEMA or the tags or the states. So we would take those authorities that reside there and we'll use those. But we still got a little bit more work in defining authorities. I mean, legislation and those sort of things has kind of always been behind cyber, and it still is. So we're still trying to play catch up on the legislation piece. We're working through the authorities piece through Cybercom, and I think we got the right folks heading in the right direction on help defining that challenge.
Next question, please.
This question is for General Finnan. Could you describe the way in which you work with the combatant commands in the development of their technology needs for the networks in DoD? Also, could you speak some on the work of your office with Speak some on the work of your office with our allies.
Sure. We work very, very closely with the combatant commands. As a matter of fact, that's really where we spend the majority of our time, because they're out there on the edge fighting the war, and we're fighting the war every day. So we spend a lot of time getting their inputs. We synchronize their needs. A lot of their needs end up in our policies and guidance, and actually a part of our oversight structure. We do a lot of work with STRATCOM, as well as each of the geographic commands, and of course Cyber Command. But that is a daily interaction throughout the CIO, because we're not making this up on our own. We're not in the Pentagon saying, we know all and we're going to tell everyone what they need. We talk to the people, the warfighter, actually out there. So it's a very, very close relationship. It's a continuous relationship, and that's how we really get requirements, is based on our combatant commands. The question on allies, we do have a section of the CIO that works with allies very closely with NATO. We go over quite often to NATO meetings where we work NATO policy. We work very, very closely with their equivalent of Disa over there. We also have a number of bilateral and multilateral engagements where we're working in the Pacific or with other European countries, where we're trying to make sure that what we field for our allies and friends, we are going to be able to cooperate and share and be able to interoperate in whatever the future may bring. Right? Nobody knows what the future is going to bring, and so what we need to make sure we do is that we're adaptable. It goes back to adaptable and resilient, and so that's what we're focused on as we engage with each of our international partners.
I mean, from a NORAD NORTHCOM perspective, Don CIO has been one of our strongest advocates, and on a binational level as well, as we upgrade our NORAD systems. And as we look forward to the Arctic, Don CIO has been advocating for us across the board, and one of our closest partners, along with CyberCom, obviously, and then DHS. So.
But maybe if I could just comment a little bit, just as a partner of the CIO, just to echo General Finnan's points. Even the first question that General Zabel asked about control, we have such a great relationship with Mr. Halverson and his whole CIO team, and it's not over control, it's over the fact that he brings a focus, authority, resources to hard problems that are important to Admiral Rogers and all the commanders in terms of operational capability. And so the partnership between the CIO and the warfighter is, I've never seen it as strong as it is, and I'm not being critical of how it was in the past, but they are lashed up at the hip. They work together, and our staffs work together every single day on substantive issues, and it's hard to tell at times where the CIO, where their work stops and the combatant commands and cyber commands starts. It's linked up and meshed. It's a great partnership, so we appreciate all that they do, and I would expect to see us, the challenge is how do we make it even stronger as we go forward, but I think it's pretty daggum good right now.
Next question, please.
The next question is for Mr. Betzer. Sir, do you see or sense the rise in the department's cybersecurity baseline, or are there specific areas where you would like to see faster progress?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Do you see or sense the rise in the department's cybersecurity baseline, or are there specific areas where you would like to see faster progress?
I'm kind of missing the first part, too. Do you see what? The very first part of the question? Did you catch it?
I did not.
Sorry.
Do you see a rise in the department's cybersecurity baseline?
Do you see a rise in the department's cybersecurity baseline? Okay. Thank you. There's a bit of an echo. It's hard to hear.
Okay, I think my answer is yes. I'm not exactly sure what they're going after, but I think one of the main One of the main drivers for DoD as a whole is the whole DoD moving towards Windows 10. I think that's a major advantage to getting the department as a whole, SOCOM, also at a standard where all of us are going to a security baseline that is standard across the board will help all the warfighters overall raise the security standards. I think that addresses what was being asked.
So if I could just add, I think the question is getting at, we're trying to raise the cyber baseline of everyone in the service. And I think we're being successful at that. We're working really hard at basics to make sure that every service member understands the basics and can apply the basics. We have the cyber scorecard in place that's helping us understand how well we are doing that and what we still need to work on. So I think the definite answer to the question is yes, we are raising the cyber baseline, and I assuming that's mean our defensive posture and our ability to respond in the cyber realm.
I guess peeling apart more of that question, I guess, so are we doing it fast enough? So your special operations forces certainly are deployed, connected, stressed. Are we moving fast enough to support their need?
I don't
too
think
fast? Are we running them over?
In some cases, we do move too fast. In other cases, we are moving a little bit slow. I'm not sure all of the things that our deployed guys can do. For instance, a tactical warfighter out on the edge of the battlefield, he has to interact with agency and coalition partners. He may be at the small team or individual level. He has to take that data. There's no fast way for him to put it onto a standalone system, scan it, and make sure it's secure, and then transfer it to his system. So while we're trying to do everything correctly, I'm not sure we're working fast enough for the warfighter to be able to securely do what we're asking them to do.
So I'll just say no, we're not moving fast enough. The enemy is inside our loop, right? And it was one of the things I said right up front. Speed is going to be important. Our ability to adapt very quickly is going to determine our success. So are we moving fast enough? No, we're not right now. Are we thinking about it and working on it? You bet we are. It's a key piece of what we're doing because we know that we have to be able to get new technology, get it fielded to the warfighter faster than the enemy does. We have to be able to do that to win the battle. So I believe we need to go faster.
You know, I think it's a little bit of a trick question. You know, do we need to go faster? The answer is always yes. We need to go faster in every domain. But I would say, so if you step back and look at maybe metrics that you can measure, the question is, are we going as fast as we can given the threat and given the priority? So, and is that the slope at the right level? I think the department is moving rapidly towards, and I think there's measurable areas we could say that security baseline is higher. It's moving rapidly towards the future that we need to be in, and that's evidenced by the amount of money that's going into it. So look at the investment. So compared to other areas, look at how much money is going into this. Look at the attention of senior leadership. This is on the mind of our most senior leaders on a routine basis all of the time. Look at the amount of independent assessments being done across the department of the readiness from a cybersecurity perspective, and the fact that those results are no longer just provided privately to the leader being assessed. They go straight to the Cyber Command Commander and straight to the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman anytime that there's an issue. We just had, and I'll give you one last example, just measurable areas that I showed that I think the progress is high. The Secretary and the Chairman signed an initiative out several months ago called the Defense Cyber Culture Compliance Initiative. We call it DC3I, and I know that's a long title, but it is a comprehensive look at how we raise the standards and accountability and change the culture across the whole department. It's not just cyber professionals, it's commanders, It's how we train and evaluate our forces and their ability to succeed in combat and with a realistic threat. It's about having the standards of excellence down to our lowest level that you would see similar in other high-performing organizations, whether it's how we do nuclear propulsion or weapons control. We know how to do this in other areas, and that's standard, and that focus is being put in at a very senior level, and the senior leadership's tracking our progress towards it. So it's a huge enterprise. It's not fast enough, but the question is it resourced adequately, and is it a high enough priority, and are we making the amount of progress that we should be making given its importance? And I think the answer is it's moving rapidly in the right direction. Our senior leadership's never satisfied it's going fast enough, neither's my boss. But I wouldn't want to make it sound as if it's not a very high priority, and that I think the slope of improvement is at the right angle right now.
Next question, please.
Are joint exercises making use of JRSS, and if so, is this helping with network situational awareness?
So I think probably the best answer there is JRSS is just fielding. So I don't know that joint exercises, which if it's an exercise, we're typically trying to train in a scenario with the fielded capability that we actually have. JRSS, we're just fielding individual components of that, and I'm personally not aware of an exercise where that capability is being used. It could be. I may be ignorant on that.
Yeah, it might be just a little early for that question. So JRSS has been installed and implemented, and different communities of interest swung over to JRSS, particularly in the Army in some particular locations. And I believe that the Air Force is testing. They're in operational testing of JRSS and its capabilities to defend their use of the network, I think either now or very soon. So I believe you will see in the future. So at this moment, I'll have to say come back next year and ask the same question. At this moment, it's just a little early in the fielding schedule for that.
Well, what I will say on that is that cyber is now being integrated in just about every one of our Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 exercises. There's no way around whether or not we can exercise cyber. Again, JSSS, without question, is going to help and lead us toward more defensive measures and more security. But we're embedding cyber now into every exercise that we do. There's a piece of it. So.
Do we have another question from the booth?
How does the government plan to retain top talent under the current LPTA cost structure?
Okay, well, of course, LPTA is a contracting term, and I assume top talent, are you talking government employees, or let's say both? So under LPTA, the government, of course, is trying to get the lowest prices that we can for the goods and services that we buy. Now, LPTA, of course, is not the only contracting approach. Some contracts go LPTA, some contracts or tasks go for a best value trade-off, which is trading off among other elements. But I guess I would ask you guys, what is your impression? You work with all of you work with some level of a cyber contract or contractor cyber workforce. Do you know if your contracts have gone into place as a lowest price technically acceptable approach? If they have, how is it working? And if they haven't, or if you just don't know, talk to me about the stressors of your contract cyber workforce.
Well, I'll say I'm not aware of all the contract structures across the department. There's probably hundreds of thousands of those, but for the areas that I'm aware of, LPTA contract structure is for each contracted event in the areas where I have experience is a discussion going into your acquisition strategy to say, is the nature of the work that we're doing lend itself to a lowest price technically acceptable approach? If it does, then there's a focus on making sure the technically acceptable requirements are written to meet the needs that we think we have. There are times where we don't think that LPTA structure is the structure for a particular need that we have, and we will use a different acquisition approach. So I really can't comment on whether that dynamic is causing us not to retain top talent. It's on the contractor side. I'm sure it has an influence out there, but so the question is relatively narrow. That's where I have insight. We use a broad range of contract vehicles, and our goal isn't to try to create a brain drain or hurt the ability to retain talent, whether it's in the industrial base or on the government side, but we want to use the right contract vehicles to get the value that we need matched to the mission that we're trying to accomplish with that contract.
Yeah, I mean, we have to, dealing with contracts, we have to adhere to the law and regulations in the FAR. So we still got the requirements that we have to, legal requirements and regulatory requirements that we have to meet. At North Carolina, I'm not sure I could point to a specific contractor individual, but when we contract out, I contract out for a service, and then the company that wins the award is then obligated to provide the best personnel to meet our requirements.
So at SOCOM, I'm not aware that we're using LPTA for any IT services contracts. But in my mind, it would be, in my opinion, I don't know, top talent, it would be the right word, but based on certification and education requirements as being part of the technical acceptance, it seems like you could possibly use LPTA. I don't know if that would technically or totally get after the top talent question, but we are not using it currently, but I think you may be able to make the contract viable where you could actually use that.
Right. I think one of the things we're paying more attention to at Disa is making sure we're very definitive and clear about what is technically acceptable. And like you said, that's something you need to have as a safety net if you're working with LPTA. Next question, please.
That was our final question for the panel. Please welcome Lieutenant General Bob Wood back to the stage to formally thank them on behalf of AFCEA and our audience.
Well, thank you very much. Ending on LPTA, I wish that wasn't exactly where we ended, because there was such, a great dynamic here discussing where each of the various participants were in terms of building cybersecurity capabilities, employing the workforce, and doing this important business.